welcome everybody to another webinar with Mariner Wealth Advisors. My name is Jude Grimaldi. I'm one of the members of our practice management team here today, and we are joined by Kevin Ahearn. Kevin is one of the managers in our human resources department, so he is the perfect person to talk about our topic today, which is all about open enrollment and benefits. So Kevin, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, Jude, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome, thank you. So just a couple housekeeping items. We do want this session to be as engaging as possible. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask them inside of the Q&A. If they are relevant to the topic at hand, I will ask them during the session. But if not, we will have a section at the end of the session today if we have time, and we will get all the questions answered that we can. So we will also have this webinar recorded. So if you, if you have to jump out or if you want to send this to anybody, we will have this recording available on our website in just a few days' time. And so now we can go ahead and kick things off. So our topic today is all about open enrollment. And, being a wealth management firm, I think it's so important to first note that, all of the different facets of open enrollment are going to be relative to wealth planning. And the same thing, everything with wealth planning, open enrollment has such a big impact to the decisions that you make with open enrollment are going to have such a big impact to your wealth plan. So when you're thinking about reviewing your current plan, open enrollment is going to be the perfect timing to do so. So Kevin, I will go ahead and kick things off to you. Do you have any recommendations for getting started or any tips?
Yeah, no, Jude, it's so interesting. I heard a stat the other day that people spend approximately 15 to 20 minutes scrolling their streaming services, almost nightly. And the same amount of time people spend trying to pick out their benefits for the next plan year or during their new hire window. And something that can have an impact of thousands and thousands of dollars seems like it should be you spend a little bit more time than, picking out your next Netflix series to me. So it's a tremendous impact on your overall wealth goals, wealth planning, analyzing stuff on an every year basis. Just because something has worked for you in the past doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you in the future. So those are always my getting started tips is, don't just do what you've always done just because that's what feels comfortable. Really take time to analyze each and every year when you're going through this time of year.
Right, definitely. So, thinking about the timing of everything can folks make changes at any times, or when are we able to make changes to all of these different enrollments?
Yeah, absolutely. So with changes, the IRS is really, really strict about when you can make benefit changes. Most of the time benefits are considered a pre-tax item. And so they don't allow you to adjust those benefits just at any time. So if you do start a new job, it does open up a new window where you can make benefit changes. So a lot of times, employers will offer a benefits package so you can come on to their benefits at that time. Now, most of the time, that window, it is restricted to a certain period of time. And for the majority of plans, it is a 30-day window. So you have up to 30 days after either your start date or your effective date of benefits to get enrolled in the benefits themselves. So, if you started today, you more than likely have 30 days from today to get enrolled with coverage going into effect the first of the next month. Now, outside of your new hire window, obviously, not everybody starts a new job every single year. So most employers have an annual open enrollment. And now for plans that are on a calendar year, most of the time this is in the fall. That's why this is really, really relevant now, because a lot of times people are doing their enrollment around this time each year. So, people always tell me, oh, this is kind of your Super Bowl time frame. So that's why we really like to publish this now. So more than likely you have open enrollment. You might be going through it now, or you're going through it in a couple of weeks. But this is a time when you have the ability to make changes to your benefits for the next plan year. Outside of your new hire window or your annual open enrollment, the only other opportunity you have to make changes is if you have a significant life event. So this is what's called a qualifying life event. So examples of this include if you get married, if you get divorced, if you have a baby, maybe you lose coverage elsewhere, or your dependents age off the plan and they lose coverage elsewhere. those are all considered significant life events in the eyes of the IRS. And that would allow you to make benefit changes. So you can, if you leave your employer and you start a new job and you find your spouse has a better plan than your new employer, you can move on to your spouse's plan. So those are really specific examples of times you can make enrollment changes outside of this designated IRS period.
Now, when we have a significant life event, and so let's say, somebody has a baby, does that open up the ability to make changes to everything? Like, so can you still add your spouse to insurance if a baby, even though that's not directly?
Yes, yeah, it creates a brand new, a fully open window for all of your benefit changes. So a lot of times, for example, when my spouse and I had our first baby, she was on her own health insurance plan. I was on our health insurance plan through Mariner. When my son was born, we combined plans, and she came on to our plan when I added my son. So yeah, you absolutely have the ability to make multiple changes if you were to experience that qualifying life event.
Sure. So as far as life events go, we have marriage, divorce. Oh, there we go. Perfect.
And these are the most common. There's a couple of other instances where you could make specific enrollment changes. For instance, if you have a dependent care FSA plan and your dependent care needs significantly change, so if you change daycares and your cost increase dramatically or decrease dramatically. Dependent care doesn't decrease dramatically, let's be honest.
Right.
But if those occur, then you would be able to make changes to your benefit offerings. But otherwise, it is really situated to, marriage, divorce, birth or adoption of a child, death in the family, or loss of coverage elsewhere, either at from a dependent standpoint at age 26, or termination, something like that.
Perfect. Thank you. So, a lot of the time I find that when people think of benefits, and I'm a victim of this as well, they usually will focus on the medical side of things. But, in reality, that only scratches the surface of what's available. Personally, I work with a lot of advisors every day. So I work with a lot of different financial plans and the implementations of the different plans and asset types. And I think that is such a big part of both planning and the benefits package as well. So thinking more specifically of, an HSA and an FSA and different asset types, can you talk a little bit about the differences and the benefits of these?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I get into the different types of assets, so HSA, FSA, I want to take a step back and define what each of these are. So HSA stands for Health Savings Account. FSA stands for Flexible Spending Account. Now, they operate very, very similar, but there are a number of key differences. So I want to start with the HSA, or the Health Savings Account. Now, with an HSA account, this is paired with a high deductible health plan. So again, there are very specific situations that the IRS defines that the medical plan has to be considered a high deductible health plan. And really, the most general sense of a high deductible health plan is it has as it's called, a higher deductible than your traditional health plans. Likewise, on high deductible health plans, there's no co-payments tied to it. So you pay a contracted rate between providers and insurance companies. You don't pay if you go to your primary care physician, you don't pay a $10 copay or whatnot. Now, the benefits of that high deductible health plan come into play with your HSA account. So this is an account, a bank account that's paired with a high deductible health plan. And now with an HSA account, there's really three main tax advantages that come into play with an HSA account. The first is your contributions. So your contributions to an HSA are always considered tax-free. So they're always considered pre-tax. So rather than, with HSAs, most of the time the health plan itself has a lower premium or a lower amount that you pay just to have the insurance. So a really common strategy is pay the lower premium, invest the difference between a higher premium plan and the HSA plan into your HSA account that you can then utilize on healthcare expenses. So a couple of ways to make tax-free contributions, a lot of times your employer will set you up through a payroll contribution, so it can come out of your paycheck automatically, so you don't even think about it. You can also set up an online account through specific vendors. There's a number of different HSA vendors, and you can make contributions through their online portal. And any contribution that you make via a lump sum method is considered an above the line tax deduction that can be written off at the end of the year. And there's a couple of unique things about an HSA contribution. There's two really. First, you can change that HSA contribution at any point throughout the year. So as your medical needs change, you can actually make changes to that HSA, the contribution amount, without experiencing a qualifying life event. Additionally, and this one's a little bit less known, you can actually make contributions to an HSA account all the way through tax deadline of the following plan year. So that means if you have a HSA account in 2022, you can actually make contributions to that 2022 account through April 15th. I think it's April 15th of 2023. So if you're working, working your way through your taxes and you're finding that you're going to owe Uncle Sam a little bit more, you can actually make a contribution to that HSA, previous year HSA account to lower your overall tax liability. So that's your first tax advantage. Mm-hmm. Your second tax advantage comes into play as you grow your HSA account. So with an HSA, you can roll the entire value of your HSA over year after year after year. There's no forfeiture. It's not a use it or lose it plan. So you can grow that account. With the growth in that account, any interest that is gained, because it is a bank account, any interest that's gained actually grows tax-free. Additionally, most HSA accounts allow you to invest those HSA dollars. And similar to a traditional style 401k plan, any growth on that investment actually grows tax-free. So your money works a little bit harder for you. Mm-hmm. Your third tax advantage comes into play when you actually go to utilize your HSA funds. So as long as you're utilizing them on a qualified HSA expense, they come out of your account tax-free. So very common examples of what's considered qualified, just about anything health and wellness related, as long as it's not cosmetic. Mm-hmm. So once the pandemic hit, the IRS kind of opened the floodgates and they allowed over-the-counter drugs to become eligible, and now they can't close that floodgate. So your over-the-counter drugs, your prescriptions, your doctor's visits, your labs, there's certain premiums that qualify. So if you needed to pay for COBRA premiums, or if you're of Medicare age, if you need to pay Medicare premiums or supplemental Medicare premium plans, those are all HSA eligible expenses.
Yeah, that was one of the things that was surprising to me, once I got my first HSA, is seeing what was actually available and what did qualify as a plan. So if you don't know, log into your HSA account or whoever your provider may be, and they usually will have a full list of everything that is qualified.
Yeah. All of the HSA vendors will have a list. I like to keep it pretty generic because usually that list is like 600 things long. Yeah. So you're going to be able to find out whether or not something's considered eligible. In fact, and I think this is kind of a nice segue into our next account, because if you've ever had an FSA or a flexible spending account, you can actually utilize those HSA funds on the exact same things you utilized in FSA. And there it is, the segue into the FSA. So an FSA stands for flexible spending account. So unlike an HSA that has to be tied to a high deductible health plan, an FSA does not have to be tied to a specific medical plan. Now, you can't pair an FSA with an HSA and spend them both on medical dollars. So you can't pair an FSA with a high deductible health plan, but it can be paired with a lot of your more traditional medical providers. Additionally, if you choose to enroll in a spouse's medical plan and your company offers an FSA plan, you can still participate in their FSA plan. In fact, within Mariner, we have a number of associates that don't necessarily participate in our medical plan. They can still actively participate in one of our FSAs. Now, the really, really nice thing about FSAs is the full value of your medical flexible spending account is available on your effective date of benefits. So if you enroll in $1,000 worth of the FSA, that full $1,000 is available to be utilized on your first day of benefits. With the FSA, just like the HSA, it is tax-free, so you contribute pre-tax on a pre-tax basis through your payroll. Now, there are contribution limits that are lower than the HSA. So for the FSA for 2022, the limit is $2,850. And Jude, I didn't even update you, but the IRS was really nice this year, and they announced the FSA limits last week. And so those have been increased to just over $3,000. So you're seeing a $200 increase on the medical FSA next year to $3,050.
Nice.
Yeah, yep. And there's a couple of examples of what FSAs can be utilized on. So they can, again, go towards doctor visits, copays, labs, prescriptions, again, over-the-counter medications, medical equipment. If you're not familiar, there is actually a dedicated website to FSA eligible items. It's a really complicated URL. It's www.fsastore.com. So you can log on there, you can find whether or not something is eligible for FSA usage, and you can actually purchase things directly with your FSA dollars.
So a question on the contribution amounts.
Yeah.
Now, IRS raised them last week this year, and I'm assuming it was because everything that has happened in the past few years or so. How often do they typically change that? I'm sure they do their own annual assessment and decide whether or not, but do you find that increases or decreases?
Yeah, so they usually do it annually. Usually that annual increase is tied to cost of living as well as inflation and everything else we hear about. And typically those are announced towards the end of the year. And I always joke with people because it's really funny. People have all open enrollment going on in the fall, and the IRS likes to hold on to those, usually likes to hold on to those until like mid-November, early December, and not announce them. This year, I guess they were feeling generous and they announced them early, but it is all done on an annualized basis. Yeah. So there are a couple of limitations to the FSA that are different than the HSA. So with the HSA, again, there's not a whole lot of limitations. It's not a use it or lose it plan. You can roll those entire value of your dollars over. With an FSA, the funds typically have to be utilized within the plan year. Now, there are two regulations that the IRS allows for FSA plans. So you can have a grace period with an FSA plan, and with the grace period style of plan, once your plan year ends, there's a 2.5-month buffer window, for lack of a better word, where your entire value of your balance rolls over and you can still utilize those funds for 2.5 months. Now, once that 2.5-month mark expires, those funds are then subject to forfeiture. So again, you lose access to those funds. So they do have to truly be used within that time frame. Or other plans, they will offer a carryover limit. And for the carryover limit, that's $570 per year. And again, in my view, these are less common because if somebody has more than $570 and they abide by that grace period, then they lose access to anything over $570 on January 1st. Now, the nice thing about the carryover plan is you can utilize that full $570 for the whole plan year. So there's not a set grace period amount. Now, sure. FSAs are also not portable and there's no investment option. So if you leave your FSA platform or your plan, your provider, then you're going to lose access to those funds. And a really simple chart that I like to utilize in comparing HSAs and FSAs is available right here. And I didn't even update the chart yet. This is how new those FSA limits are, Jude. I haven't even updated my chart yet. So you can see here, this really helps break down key features between the HSA and the medical FSA. So again, trying to simplify the process. I know when we get into the insurance world, there's so much jargon. So trying to simplify that process is really what I pride myself on, and something that we try to do for our associates within Mariner.
Sure. So what would you say is the primary advantage or the primary benefit of the FSA over the HSA?
Yeah. I think the single biggest advantage of the FSA is when the funds are available. If you're looking at high medical costs in January, then your medical FSA is going to be really beneficial, because that full $3,000 is available to you on January 1st. So there's some really strategic things you can do to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
One common example I give is, like, if you're looking at having LASIK surgery, if you want to have your LASIK surgery in January, well, you're going to have access to $3,000 on January 1st. So, and it's not just, tied down to LASIK. It could be any medical procedure,
right?
If that occurs early in the year. So that's the biggest one I see.
Yeah. That makes sense. Now,
Yep.
Is there any limitations on the HSA and the FSA from a retirement standpoint? So, like, can a retired person still utilize the HSA and the FSA?
Yes, on the HSA side. So with the you still have, like I said, the HSA, it is your account. That's your personally owned account. A lot of times with an HSA, your employer will open that account initially, but from that perspective, they really take a step back, because it's really promotes more smarter consumerism, for lack of a better word, because with an HSA, again, it's your personal account. It's something that your person are responsible for. The substantiation of claims is completely on you as the individual. With a medical FSA account, in order to access those funds, you have to submit documentation for that account. So like if you pay for a lab or a prescription, you have to then submit that prescription for reimbursement. So you have to upload that receipt, and it would be substantiated by your medical FSA provider, and then you would receive the dollars for that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. So Jude kind of mentioned a 401k, and really all of these are really tax favored accounts, because you get a lot of tax savings from an HSA and an FSA, but it can really be tied to your 401k. And from a benefits perspective, I always encourage associates to look at your medical benefits, but also think about your 401k. And the single biggest thing I tell associates is make sure you're aware of what your company is contributing to your 401k plan. A lot of plans, they will either have a safe harbor company match, or they will have a discretionary or a non-discretionary employer company match, where, there's some plans that if you defer a specific amount, the company will then contribute to your 401k. And that's a discretionary plan. A safe harbor plan states that the employer has to make a contribution to your 401k plan. So they have to defer 3% or up to 3% or something like that. So making sure you're aware of what that company match is, so that way you can take advantage of it.
Yeah, taking advantage of that match is huge. So you can see such significant increases in the value over time just by taking advantage of the maximum of that, or just taking advantage of that at all.
Right. And there are some 401k plans that will allow for changes throughout the year. I have seen other 401k plans that only allow you to make changes, once a year or twice a year. So it does tie into open enrollment for a lot of people, because sometimes employers will tie open enrollment to the only time you can make 401k changes. So again, trying to get the full picture of the benefits package, make sure if your employer only lets you make 401k changes during your open enrollment season, that you are taking advantage of that. Couple of other simple strategies. Once you hit age 50, the maximum amount you can contribute to a 401k plan does increase. So 50 and over, you are eligible for a catch-up contribution. So if you are looking to maximize your 401k contribution, your retirement readiness, you can increase that contribution once you hit age 50.
Mhm.
Now, 401k limits are, again, defined by the IRS. So for 2022, the 401k limit is $20,500 for people below age 50. Again, when you hit age 50, you get that catch-up contribution. The IRS has defined that for this year as $6,500.
Yeah. Okay.
And then,
So,
oh, sorry, go ahead,
yeah,
Jude.
no, go.
Oh, yeah,
I was-
yeah. No, I was just gonna say, when thinking about a very simple strategy to look at is if your employer offers both a traditional, which is your standard pre-tax contribution, as well as a Roth contribution, which is going to be after taxes are withheld. Think about what those tax advantages, what the effect they could have on the distribution of your 401k. So when it comes time to retire for retirement. Reason I say that is, early on in your career, that's more than likely your lowest income level. That's hopefully the least amount you're going to make over the course of your career. And as your career progresses and grows, your compensation will increase. And so early on, it might be a better idea to defer to a Roth 401k plan because you're already paying the taxes on that. And so that way, when you go to take the distribution, you're not subject to any income tax. And so maybe you're at a higher tax bracket hopefully you're at a higher tax bracket when you retire, and you're not paying the taxes at the time of the distribution.
Yeah.
Now it also works, the other way. Maybe once you've hit your plateau, you're very content, your salary stayed the same for the last couple of years, you have a good baseline. Now maybe you want to introduce a pre-tax 401k plan to help you save on taxes at the time of the contribution. So you can work the strategies in both ways.
Yeah, definitely. And that's exactly what I was going to say a minute ago is, when I'm thinking about the different assets and the contributions and the withdrawals of those assets, the primary thing that everybody wants to focus on is the tax impact that's going to have. Whether it's you want to maximize the taxes now or you want to focus on the taxes later on, that's a really good opportunity to be strategic with these assets. And, if you have an advisor, talk to your advisor or just, go into whoever your 401k provider is and figure out what exactly that best strategy is going to be for you.
Yeah. And you can see it. You can see, from this graph right here, there's tremendous advantages to deferring tax-free, tax deferred, as opposed to just having those to your normal taxable bank account.
Definitely. I like this chart.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's always fun to see, hey, I can be saving over $100,000 more if I defer to a tax-free account rather than my normal bank account. And that's always encouraging on my end.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for younger folks, people that are just out of college or they're just starting with a company that is offering the 401k, that's one of the biggest questions I see is, do I do Roth or do I do traditional? And I think that this really does a good job at showing what the benefits could be over time.
Yeah, and talking with our investment team, they always tell me you're never young enough to start investing. So always take advantage. If you are just starting out, take advantage of making those contributions because the one thing you can't get back is time. And when you're looking at exponential growth, you can't substitute that time very well.
Right. So we talked a lot about the different asset types and a lot of the other benefits that are available. And everybody really knows a lot about the medical benefits and, health insurance and vision and dental. What are some of the other insurance types that we should be keeping in mind or other benefits that are available usually through an employer or not that people should be taking considerations of?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of different supplemental benefits that you could get on your own, to be quite frank, but a lot of times employers offer them as part of the total overall benefit package. And the first one I like to talk about is disability. There's two main types of disability. There's short-term disability and there's long-term disability. Now, we always think about, hey, how can I protect different things in my life? How can I protect myself, my car, my home? Well, there's also your income that you need to think about. And one of the great places to start is with disability income. So what were to happen if you were to miss work for any reason? If, if maybe you're the only one who does work, and so your family is completely reliant on your income. Great place to start is disability insurance. And a lot of employers, they will have short-term disability or long-term disability available to enroll in. There's some employers that will offer short-term and long-term disability at no cost to their associates. So again, just making you aware of what benefits exist out there, what's available to you, so that way you're taking advantage of it. You don't want to be left out in the cold someday if you do have something that keeps you off work just because you didn't take advantage of your open enrollment window.
Right, definitely.
Obviously, as we continue to age and get older, our healthcare costs increase. I really, really like this slide because it really breaks down what that cost impact's going to look like. And so just think about how long are you truly going to live? What's the expectation of living past retirement age? And then what that cost is going to look like. So thinking about all of these things, an HSA account, setting aside dollars to pay for future medical expenses, 401k account, all of that can be really, really impactful on your future long-term retirement goals.
Mm-hmm. And, one thing to mention is just the unpredictability of the future. You don't know what's going to happen. And, look what happened over the past few years with COVID and, a global pandemic. No one was really expecting that to happen.
Right.
And so taking advantage of these things is key.
Right. 100%. And, in addition to disability insurance, I always like touching on life insurance. Mm-hmm. Again, another benefit that a lot of employers offer is employer paid group term life insurance. So group term life insurance, you can get coverage for yourself at a particular amount. You can get coverage for spouses. You can get coverage for children. And again, a lot of times employers are offering that at no cost to you. In addition to that, a lot of times employers offer additional life insurance. And the beauty of additional life insurance through your employer is because this is a group rated plan, the rates you're paying can be a lot more competitive than you might find just based on an individual.
Right. So
obviously, tremendous benefits of having life insurance. They help protect against those unpredictable, unexpected medical instances.
Right.
Nobody likes talking about it. It's hard for me to talk about, but it's something that we need to think about. And as your income increases. Again, going back to our theme here, during open enrollment, it's a really good time to evaluate whether or not you need to increase your life insurance amount.
Right. That is one of the things that people don't like to talk about. It is the subject that people tend to stay away from, but we have to make sure that we are prepared and our families prepared if something were to happen. Yeah.
No, I agree. And again, just looking at life expectancy, I know we've kind of touched on it a little bit, mm-hmm. but as technology, as healthcare becomes better and better, more proficient, it's just going to extend the window as to how long we're living. So making that plan for longevity, taking advantage of what's available today. There's a ton of tax savings that are out there. We've talked about HSAs, 401ks, FSAs that are available to you as individuals to really help you plan for that long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's key to make sure that you are, or your advisors, including this as part of your plan and taking this into consideration.
Yep, for sure. Just a couple of other benefits I'll touch on really quickly here that not a lot of people think about. And I refer to them as supplemental insurance benefits. So they are intended to supplement your medical insurance, not necessarily replace your medical insurance. So common examples of this include critical illness plans, accident plans, hospital indemnity plans. There's even like a cancer plan. And with these benefits, what they do is if you were to be diagnosed with a critical illness, or if you were to suffer an off-the-job accident, or if you were to go to a hospital, what these plans do is they pay you directly for that unexpected medical emergency. So it really provides you additional protection against those unexpected medical costs. You know, I tell people all the time, there's no way to predict future medical expenses. One way to offset some of the higher cost items from a medical perspective is enrolling in these lower premium supplemental insurance benefits, because again, these do not pay the provider, they don't pay the insurance company. These benefits pay you directly.
That's huge. That's
Yeah.
nice. That's a really good benefit of that.
Yeah, and these are becoming more increasingly popular. So there's a lot of good providers. The claims process to actually go in and create a claim with these through these benefits has been made much more efficient. I know like 6 or 7 years ago, I rolled my ankle really bad playing basketball, and it took like 2 to 3 months to get the claim processed. And it was kind of a painful process, really off-putting for me. I recently filed a hospital claim, took me 10 days to get paid. So it's really, they've really come a long way in the getting claims, getting dollars back into your hand for those, again, for those unexpected medical emergencies.
Definitely.
So obviously, a lot of things to consider when going through healthcare. You know, as you get older, as you start to get towards that Medicare age, something to look at, think about this time of year is that Medicare enrollment. So Medicare enrollment comes around this time of year as well. So it's from October 15th through December 7th. So whether or not, should you be looking at Medicare or maintaining your group plan? And I know, Jude, you guys, we did a Medicare presentation, didn't we?
Yes, we did. So I believe it was in June of this year, we did a presentation specifically just on Medicare. So that is a perfect plug here. If you are interested in Medicare and you want to learn more about that, on our if you just search for Mariner Wealth Advisors webinars, on our webinar page, we have a full webinar that was specifically dedicated to Medicare. And we had one of our partners come in and do a full presentation there. They have tons and tons of resources in there as well. So I highly recommend jumping in and taking a look at that presentation as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would love to say I'm an expert in Medicare, but let's be honest, who is an expert in Medicare? So I know I wanted to touch on that, but I was like, I'm not going to go too deep into Medicare.
Yeah.
But again, think about, what does your family outlook look like? Like, are you insuring yourself? What are the options that are available to you? And then looking at long-term care as well. A very, very popular increasingly popular benefit is long-term care insurance. So what is going to happen over the course of the long term, when you're not able to care for yourself, there are policies that are available. And again, they're becoming much more popular. And then again, life insurance. So again, providing for that protection in case something were to happen to you.
Right.
Oh, there's the Medicare enrollment right there. Yes. So just rehammering the Medicare enrollment deadline. And yeah, that the Medicare enrollment, it does open up here, or we're in the process of it, but take advantage of the resources because it can be very, very confusing and overwhelming if you're not connected to the right resources. What Medicare Part A is, Part B, prescription drug plans, supplemental plans, all of that works, how all of that works together. It is a puzzle. Yeah.
Our partner, Joanne Giardini Russell, she's the CEO of Giardini Medicare, and she started her company and all they do is Medicare. So they have everything and anything that you might need.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Jude, I think that really wraps it up for me. Did we have any questions that came through? Did any questions that, did you think about any questions that I didn't cover or that I didn't touch on?
Yeah, no, we definitely had a few that came through. And one of the ones is, relative to a question that I asked earlier about retirement and the HSA. So for somebody that is retired and doesn't have an HSA as of today, they didn't open one before, so they don't currently own one.
Okay.
How do they go and open one? Do they just go to a provider?
So it depends on the type of medical plan that they currently have. And the reason I say it that way is because if you're enrolled in Medicare, you can't take advantage of an HSA because you cannot contribute to a pre-tax HSA account if you're enrolled in either Part A or Part B of Medicare. Now, if you're on a insurance plan, maybe from the government or a state funded plan or something like that, it's going to be specific to your medical plan. So you'll want to check in on that. If the plan is considered a high deductible health plan, which I believe there are government or state plans, ACA plans that are considered high deductible health plans, then yes, you can absolutely go and open an HSA account.
Perfect. So one of the other questions was just in general to long-term care, how do you assess long-term care needs and what's the right age to buy one in? And, I think that is the perfect opportunity to talk to your advisor. They will help you analyze what the best situation is going to be for you, depending on what your current age is and what your family health history is. I know that's a really big impact on what you potentially might need in the future. So that's a good opportunity to get an advisor.
100%. And I'd echo that. A lot of us are kind of in a sandwich generation as well. So, potentially raising kids, caring for parents. So maybe having that conversation with your advisor, if that is where you're at. So maybe looking at long-term care solutions for not only for yourself, but also your parent.
All right. So going back to Medicare really quickly, if we have somebody that turns 65 next year, are they able to enroll in Medicare right when they turn 65, or do they have to wait for the open enrollment period?
So yes, right when you turn 65, you're able to enroll in Medicare. In fact, Medicare is going to look back for 6 months to make sure there's no lapse in coverage. And so if you are, and I'll tie this into the HSAs, which I talked about extensively, but if you are participating in an HSA plan and you are nearing that Medicare enrollment age, so if you're nearing 65, you actually have to stop your HSA contributions up to 6 months prior to getting enrolled in Medicare. Because Medicare has that look back period where, again, the intention of the rule, the spirit of the rule is great. They want to make sure you don't have a lapse in coverage anywhere for the last 6 months. The unintended consequence of that is because HSAs are not compatible with Medicare enrollment, you can't make pre-tax contributions for 6 months prior to enrollment in Medicare.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. But yeah, if you're looking at Medicare coverage, you want to start the conversation with the Medicare consultant as early as 6 months before your 65th birthday, really. Right. A lot of the Medicare consultants that I work with, they'll say 3 months is when you want to start looking at it, just to there's a lot of forms and paperwork and online applications that you have to go through. So just making sure those T's are crossed, I's are dotted.
Yeah, and even just the overall complexity of Medicare, the earlier you get started, the better.
For sure, 100%.
So this is more on the HSA and the FSA. And this is a little bit more of a statement, but somebody I had wrote in, I think it was good to note. So some companies don't offer the HSA and some plans don't offer the HSA. And so typically you do have to have a high deductible plan for the HSA, correct?
Yes. Yep. That's correct. And the easiest way to determine whether or not your medical plan is considered a high deductible health plan is whether or not there are co-payments tied to that plan. So if your employer is telling you, hey, when you go to your primary care physician, or if you go to your chiropractor or your allergist and you pay a flat $20, that's a copayment. And so that plan is not going to be eligible for an HSA account.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Let's take a look here. So, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say HSAs, and I should have mentioned this earlier. HSAs are a relatively new concept from the medical insurance world. And I air quote new because they were introduced in 2003, which was, 20 years ago at this point. But employers are just now finding the real benefits to an HSA plan. A lot of when HSAs first started, they were really utilized by employers as a means of controlling exponential cost that medical plans were going through and have gone through since 2003. So they really didn't provide the right tools to an HSA. That includes education, that includes making an employer contribution to that HSA account.
Right.
They just said, okay, now we're going to make the associate, the employee, more responsible for the deductible. That's going to offset our costs. It's going to lower our premium, our fixed costs. So, you know, I would say for the first 5 to 10 years, that's how a lot of employers handled HSA accounts. As associates and employees became smart consumers and started seeing the benefits of an HSA account itself, that's when a lot of the education followed. So now you have, you know, educating associates about the benefits of an HSA account, of how it can be both cost beneficial to the employer as well as the associate, has become a lot more relevant in the last, you know, 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, if somebody were, like, let's say somebody has an HSA currently, and then they do turn 65 and enroll into Medicare, they can still contribute to the HSA after the fact, correct?
No, they
cannot.
can still utilize the funds in the HSA account. So you can utilize those funds on healthcare expenses. And in fact, I encourage you to utilize them. But if you enroll in Medicare, you can't make that contribution tax-free.
Okay.
Now, the nice thing is, once you turn age 65, the penalty associated with the penalty associated with utilizing your HSA funds on a non-qualified expense goes away. So up until age 65, if you go and, you know, let's say you're at CVS and you have a prescription that you're picking up, and then you also buy a gallon of milk or something like that, and you just swipe your HSA cards, technically, if you're audited by the IRS, you could be assessed a 20% penalty on that purchase. Once you hit age 65, that penalty goes away. So if you want to diversify your retirement portfolio, a nice way to do that is through an HSA account, because it does become another source of retirement income after age 65.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, I think that we could do an entire webinar just on HSAs.
Oh yeah. No,
There's so much to them.
Yeah, they're exciting, and it's when utilized and presented the correct way, HSAs they provide for a lot of purchasing power from an employee's perspective.
All right. So it looks like we have one more question that came in. So if somebody is, so in this situation, the client has the individual has a wife that is younger than them. Can they contribute to the family HSA when they turn 65, for part of the HSA? So the HSA was from their employer, and they typically contributed the family amount in the past.
So they moved. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question. They moved from the spouse remained on the employer's plan, but moved from a family enrollment to an individual enrollment. Is that right? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. So in that case, they would just be subject to the individual contribution limit. And there are some special rules. It depends on when that happens as well. So in this example, it might be pretty easy because you're looking at a January 1st turnover. If that were to occur mid-year, then it gets a little bit more complex, because you have to, in order to contribute maximum amounts, you have to remain in the HSA plan for a set period of time. And so you'd really want to take that opportunity to, again, that goes into the full wealth planning picture to get a better overall look as to that specific situation. Again, just to make sure you're staying compliant.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a perfect segue into just making sure, and going back into this conversation of making sure that you are looking at the entire wealth picture when you are enrolling in these benefits.
Yep. No, 100%. It's something that, it's really, really impactful on an annual basis, but it can also extend out into your long-term picture.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for the time today. This has been really helpful for me as well. I've been researching a lot of this and we're preparing for the presentation, but I still learned a ton, through this. So thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Very, very happy to be on and very, very happy to join you, Jude. And thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for joining. And if anybody does have any questions in the future, don't hesitate to reach out to Mariner. We'll be able to help you with whatever it might be.